Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Creator of the Say Things Better method of intentional communication, and just an all-around awesome, exciting person. Lila, how are you today?
I'm awesome and exciting. How are you, Andy?
I'm excited as well. I'm so glad to have you on this podcast today. Thank you for being willing to do podcast.
It. Oh, I would do anything that you asked in terms of like collaboration. I think you're definitely like top 3 most interesting people I've met this year so far.
Wow, that is huge. Thank you so much, Lila. That means a lot. And likewise,
well, I think you bring so much new, different stuff to the table and things I haven't heard before, and especially around leadership. And we talked about this last week, but I want your listeners to go to LinkedIn and see a post that Andy Vargo posted about a talk that he gave. When was it? A couple weeks ago? About leadership?
It was actually last month. I've just finally got it posted, but yes.
Oh, okay. It takes me a long time to post
about
content
authentic leadership.
Too.
Yeah, and it is on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so
it's also on YouTube.
Time ever. Oh, good. Yeah, well, people should find it. And what I loved about it was that, people use the word authentic all the time as though everybody has the same definition for that word and we know what it means. But a lot of the time it's like, okay, once something becomes a buzzword, we don't know what it means at all anymore. But the way that you defined it as from minute to minute, you might be in a leadership position, you might be a follower, you might be taking leadership from somebody else, you might be giving it. And just that freedom to be whoever you are from moment to moment, to me, that was the closest definition to true authenticity that I've heard. And for you to say something like that in the context of leadership, which is such a saturated market in terms of speakers and people who have ideas, it shocked me that I heard something new in that field. And I had to get you on the phone right away. So this is our second call in like a week, and I would do anything to have more time to talk to you.
Oh, I really appreciate that. And it really is, we have these ideas that come to us in moments of trying to figure out how to fill that need, right? And for me, it was, I've got this mix of people in the room that are going to be professionals and people at all different levels of leadership and students. Mm-hmm. And how do you make sure that they don't feel like they're wasting their time listening to another leadership talk if they don't feel like a leader? So the first goal had to be to get everybody to see themselves as a leader.
Oh, I love that.
Well, I really appreciate that. I am happy to coordinate with you too, because when we met last month at No Longer Virtual in Atlanta, which is an awesome conference. Check that out, everybody. Mm-hmm. Google No Longer Virtual, find it on LinkedIn, look up Elkins Consulting, and get involved in this because it's a great event. But when we met, your talk about finding your 3 words really made me think about how am I communicating with intention and how am I actually putting myself out into the world.
Oh, my gosh. Well, this is a love fest.
I know.
I love that.
People are probably
just
disgusted by it. Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, thanks.
That's fine.
I put a lot of thought into that.
I'm being authentic in this moment. This is who I really am. I'm just effusive, and I've got like love coming out the gills, especially for you.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
especially now that you've said such nice things about your values. Yeah, it is the best way to be.
Yeah.
There's so much love we can have if we just keep it inside. What's the point of it?
Right. Well, so in a couple minutes, I'm going to put you on the spot and say what makes you so awkward, or what have you done that's awkward to get to where you are today. But before we get to that, what is it that the listeners should really know about the essence of you and who you are?
I'm just this girl from New York. I live in Dallas now, but, in New York, everybody is some kind of extraordinary. And so nobody really stands out for their particular brand of what's special about them because everybody has one. So I guess I'm just this girl from New York, but my particular brand of extraordinary is that I care about communication. I care about the way people feel as a result of being with me. I care that the messages of brands that I think are powerful reach their audiences, because my help in that way, helping brands to communicate their message, is how I expand my reach exponentially. I don't always have to be the person who makes the impact. I can help the people who are making that impact talk about it. And if that's how I'm in service of how I make the world a better place, then I'm all for it. So that's what I've been doing through intentional communication. I was an actress for about 10 years professionally, and during that time I learned a lot of tools that people in business could use to communicate at home and at work. So now I'm wandering around the world and talking to people who will listen to me about how they can talk to people who want to listen to them.
Right, and I absolutely love the term intentional communication, because we communicate all day long without even being aware of what we're giving off with body language and tone and inflection, let alone the words that we're choosing to say. And so when you put the word intentional in front of it, it really makes you stop to think about, how am I meaning to communicate? What do I want to say or get across to the world? And am I behaving in a way that is intentional about how I want that relayed?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You see people's faces change, like you said, facial expressions and tone. And so these, to me, are symptoms of whatever your intention is or isn't. And, like, I get comments all the time about videos that I'm in and how expressive my face is. But if you go to any party or, like, any Italian family's dinner table, you'll see a lot of expression. You'll see, like, a lot of people's faces moving. And it's not like they're going, let me raise my eyebrow before I say this thing. They're looking at you a kind of a way because you said a kind of thing that made them feel a kind of thing. And so their faces do a thing. So it all starts
it just all goes along.
Yeah, that's what I want people to do, is just, like, start focusing on the inside before you communicate, and your message will go so much farther, because your face will reflect it, because your voice will reflect it, and everything about your body, and it'll just manifest what you've started on the inside. We almost can't help it when we're excited about something, when we're trying to be there for someone. When our intentions are to comfort someone, you see it on our faces. When our intentions are to invigorate someone, you see that in our faces too. You see our eyes light up. You see our eyebrows raised. And it's not like we should say to ourselves, let me open my eyes and raise my eyebrows. What we do is say to ourselves, I've got to get that person going. How do I invigorate them? And I think if you just think about, when you said the 3 words, what you're talking about, just for listeners to catch them up, verb your values is the 5th step of the Say Things Better method that I created. And this is how we take our internal values for how we want to make somebody feel, and we activate them by just getting intentional about asking ourselves, am I doing this thing to my communication partner? So if what I want is to invigorate, that's the thing.
Right. Yeah, and that is it really makes you think about just staying true to that core. It's almost like a simple mission statement for your communication style.
I like that, a simple mission statement. Yeah, and I think you should have that too. Like, you should have a motivation, that thing that drives you and keeps you accountable. Like, why is it so important that I invigorate somebody? If I think that that's how I get them to take action on something else that's important to me, then that's why I verb that value. That's why I want to invigorate them, because I want them to feel energized. I want them to feel that they can take on the world in the specific way that I want them to, which for me is I want to power a whole world of intentional communicators. So if what I need is to energize them, to mobilize them, to activate them, I'm just going to set my intentions before I talk to them or write copy or put a picture out there through digital communication on Instagram or wherever. I'm going to ask myself, does it accomplish that thing, that verb? Does it do that to them? And that's how I'll check my work.
I love that. That's such a good check and balance to have in play. So, Lila, what's the most exciting thing you have going on right now you want to make sure listeners are aware of?
Oh, my goodness. Well, on the 9th of April, I'm going to be speaking at the Future of Technology Summit in Washington, D.C. at the Ronald Reagan Convention Center, I'm speaking with people who like work at NASA and for the federal government and Department of Commerce. Like if you go to the Future of Technology website, just Google Future of Technology Summit, you'll see the kind of speakers who are there, and then it's like, and Lila. So part of it is,
awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. And I'm trying not to let imposter syndrome take over, because the fact is they wouldn't have asked me there if they thought that people who work at NASA had already mastered intentional communication. So I'm going to bring what I have and add it to what they have. And that's, again, how I maximize my impact on the world, being a conduit for messaging and communication through these other people who are accomplishing incredible things. Let me help them to tell the stories to the people who need to support them, so that the difference I want made in the world gets done.
Oh, exactly. And I think you touched on imposter syndrome, and it's so that we could talk for hours about that, but that is so hard.
Yeah.
And I was talking with Melissa Hughes the other day, and she just did a video about imposter syndrome.
Melissa Hughes. I met her at
No
Longer
and
Virtual also.
Yeah, that was the first time I had met her as well. And one thing that she said, I don't remember if it was when we were on the phone or if it was in her video, but she mentioned that the more successful you are, the worse your imposter syndrome can potentially be. Like the more successful people actually.
I have to hear this from her.
Yeah. It's watch one of her latest YouTube videos, and it's really hit home, especially before you go to an event like that, because like I see you as being right in line with all those people that are going to be on the panel, and yet it's hard for you to see yourself that way.
It is sometimes, and I think that that's because we take our own superpowers for granted because they're so natural, they're so part of us. And a lot of our society has trained us to feel that accomplishment must be tied to hard work and struggle in order to be valuable. But I don't always have to struggle to be valuable. This intentional communication, this comes so naturally to me. This is after 10 years of professionally acting and really performing my whole life. But intentional communication is something that happens on stage. I didn't create this. Actors choose verbs themselves to communicate with intention to have some kind of effect on their scene partner. This has been done for years and years and years and years, and all I'm suggesting is that we take it off the stage and bring it into real life. That's the only way that I've changed something. So to me, it's very simple. It's very obvious.
Mm-hmm. And what's
still
simple
valuable,
and easy for one person.
Right?
Exactly. But it's not easy for everyone, and that's where the value comes in.
Right.
So Lila, let me ask now, you're doing some great things in the world, and all this awesome, talk about how to communicate and be intentional, and how easy it can be for you, but hard for others. What's that awkward thing you've had to learn how to own in order to get to where you are now?
Oh my gosh, all of this used to be the stuff I hid. This whole everything that I'm doing now in my life, the stuff that puts me on panels and puts me in front of a room of hundreds of people in major positions of power, all of this that I'm doing now, I used to silence it. Because God forbid I could go on LinkedIn and mention that I was ever an actress, and then some e-commerce recruiter would find my LinkedIn profile and see that and not consider me for what I consider to be the pinnacle of success, a bigger position in a different company with e-commerce. And if I had limited myself to those kinds of opportunities, I would never be doing what I'm doing now.
Right. So you would intentionally not let people know that you had an acting background or e-commerce because you felt like that would hold you back.
Because I thought they wouldn't trust me because of it. Yeah. I thought they would think I was frivolous, or they would think I would just take a job and then leave if I got some kind of great acting role. And so I would diminish it until it was silent. And I wouldn't let this part of myself out at all. And that was so awkward because I was like bottling up all of the things that you hear me so energized about talking about now. I was keeping it all inside. That was the most awkward ever.
Wow. And, it's what you just said about that thing that you were holding back on. That's the whole essence of my premise about owning your awkward, is that it's not just getting over it so that you can get on stage. It's that it's what it's what becomes your superpower, because
it absolutely
flipping
is.
that switch and turning it around is what got you in front of a ton of people, and it's the one thing you thought was going to hold you back. How did you?
You know what's funny?
Do you
thought it
remember?
was going to hold me back from e-commerce stuff. It never occurred to me that wasn't even supposed to be my path. It wasn't until I started using this whole method and creating it and testing it and putting it to work that I saw how much more powerful I was even in e-commerce, in digital communication, in marketing. You know, when I was applying this method, this work from my theater background intentionally, it superpowered everything I was doing, including e-commerce. But that wasn't even the end of the road for me. If that had been, you know what, like as my people say, Dayenu, it means it would have been enough. But this was, but this for me was like.
Everything else a bonus.
Yeah. And now I'm living in bonus 100% of the time.
I love that. So do you remember, was there a point where was it a conscious effort to flip the switch, or was it accidental, or how did you get comfortable in not hiding that anymore?
I had like this crisis of identity, no big deal. I was just walking around awkward forever. Like I was on LinkedIn and connecting with people, and then like, you know, they would only connect with what I would give them, what I would let them see of myself. And it was feeling really good. I loved the connection. And that stuff that I was giving them, that was still authentic. That was still part of me, but it just wasn't the whole picture. So I had these connections, and people felt like, well, that's enough. Lila's great. And that was all they needed to feel that they knew me, feel that they understood me. But I started to kind of question the connections, because I wondered if they really knew who I was, if they knew all of the awkward that I really am, like all this weird stuff I think about, how we can take acting tools and use them to communicate through digital communication and business communication, and just, I don't know, this is how I save the world. Like, how do you come out as a superhero? You know, it's just such a weird thing to do.
Right.
So it was terrifying. But there was this guy I had connected with on LinkedIn, and we were friends really quickly. His name's Adam Karpiak, and he's a recruiter in the accounting and finance space. And he's just so funny. And we were in the direct messages on LinkedIn. We were just talking about headshots. We were talking about headshots on LinkedIn and how people are so casual sometimes about the kind of image that they put up there to represent them and their brand. Like people in sunglasses or leaning against a car or with a group of people, and you don't even know which one is them. And I was saying, like, this is crazy to me, because you know, I think about the business community as so polished and so professional and having it all together. And because we're a fun group of people, I was really diminishing in my own head how totally together the acting community has at least this, and really a lot of things. Like, we've got a lot of stuff down pat that people in business would do well to learn from. I always say now that being in acting is almost like getting an MBA for what you really learn, what you really, really learn when you're in theater. But one of those things in brand communication, visual communication, was having a headshot that represented to the casting director who was going to look at it every role you could potentially play, so that when they look at that picture of you in a split second, they understand all the value and how they're going to refer roles to you. The same thing should happen with LinkedIn profile pictures, that it at least adds credibility to us, that people trust us and want to refer business to us in some way, or ask us to come in to interview for a role. We even use the same word. So when I said to Adam, like, this is crazy to me, you know, as actors, we were always super careful about our headshots to make sure that they represented us well. He was like, yeah, that's a good point, but what do you mean we actors? Or what do you mean, like, what? You're not an actor. Aren't you in e-commerce? And I was like,
oh, right.
What? Like, I started like hyperventilating.
The cat's out of the bag.
You know, I was like, it was like the cat's out of the bag, but also my first reaction wasn't, oh no, now he knows about me. My first reaction was, oh no, he never knew about me. If he didn't know this, like, he had no idea who I was. It was like, you don't know who I am? What?
And especially as big a part of your life as that is and had been
huge.
Up to that point.
Huge. My whole life. I mean, listen to me. Like, this is who I am. I'm performative. You know, I'm expressive. I can't not be like this. This is how I communicate. Of course I was going to be an actress. And my parents didn't really have a choice. And this is who I am in e-commerce, too. This is just who I am. But the fact that I was an actress professionally, and this was the bulk of my work before and during e-commerce and marketing, and then to have that hidden, it felt like I was being confronted with my own failure to communicate, my own failure to I just felt like I let myself down. Like, this is stuff that's important to me. This is stuff that I care about. Like, who am I trying to impress? How did I not let the world know this? It's more important than that. Yeah, exactly. So it was in that moment, and then I said, forget it. I'm going to start coming out whenever I can. And to me, that started in the comments on LinkedIn. It started I was kind of peppering it in to my comments here and there, saying, oh, well, when I dressed up as a matzo ball, you know, this is what I learned. And that's a true story. I really did.
Yeah.
And And also, like, hey, when I was ensemble coordinator for Connecticut Free Shakespeare, bringing out an ensemble of people and giving each of them individual direction painted a picture on stage that was so much fuller than just letting them go and see what happens, but getting intentional about what's there on the stage. And I related this directly to management. I said, when you bring people in and you bring out what's special about them, and you give each one of them a role that's important, and you make sure that they know what that role is, and you communicate it to them clearly, you get so much more of an engaged workforce. So those kinds of comments I started putting out there, and people started saying, that's really valuable, and I've never thought about it that way before. And I certainly don't know any other actors who would have brought it up to me, except that they didn't. So I was the one. I was the one bringing it up.
And I think it's interesting how we live our lives in these. I know that before I made changes in my life, I had 4 quadrants that I pictured the people in that were in my life. And it was very scary for me to think about having all of those people in the same room together. I thought about,
why is that? Yes.
Yeah, and for mine it was I had work, I had family, my immediate family, I had my extended family, and then I had friends. Like, those were my 4 different quadrants of people, and they all saw a little bit different personality of myself. When I started putting myself out there in more in a public capacity where I'm sharing speaking and thoughts, I would have events, and I'm like, I invited everybody from all those quadrants to be in the same room at the same time. This is weird for me to think about how they're going to be together. And I had to let go of the fact that they all love different parts of me. It doesn't matter that they don't see the other side necessarily, and I've worked really hard to let everybody see all the sides. But it's a really interesting dynamic when you're trying to make that change, but it's so much less stressful once you're able to do it.
Oh, yeah. And I'm thinking about, like, the 5th quadrant, or I guess then it would be like, what do you call that? Then, like, if it's like a 5th slice of the pie, the people who've never met you before, the people who are brand new to you and your message, who also ended up in that room because of one of the other quadrants. So now these people in this 5th section, like, what do those people see without any context of you before? What are you showing up as? And how do you intentionally connect your message to those people who have no memory of you? They're starting from scratch.
Yeah, that's where the intention comes down to. Going forward, this is what I'm putting out to the world, and like what you say. So that's beautiful. Yeah, well, the
intention, it's like you want to connect to your communication partner in some way that gives them value for what they need. But beyond that, Verb Your Values is about how you make people feel. So yes, you have a few different sides in terms of content, but I think that you show up as yourself, and you can show up consistently. My 3 verbs: to affirm, to connect, and to empower, that's how I show up no matter which quadrant my communication partner lives in. That's how they're going to feel when they're with me.
Right. And I love that your verb, your value is about actually it's outward facing. It's not about how you feel. It's about how do you affect other people.
Yeah, it's intentional in terms of connection, because we can always take responsibility for what we bring to the table. And that's really as far as it goes. We cannot control somebody else and how they take something. We can make adjustments for how we deliver our information, but we can't control how they feel about us, except that we can be intentional about it. So if I want to make someone feel affirmed, then I just remember to affirm. It's the simplest possible thing, but it makes such a huge difference. And if it's going to be successful, this is how. You at least can say, well, I tried, because you know that you did.
Exactly.
And you had a tool to do it with.
Yeah, and you at least did your part in trying to connect.
Yeah.
Well, Lila, we do just have a couple minutes left, so I want to know, what's that nugget? I mean, you've given us so much to think about. This episode is just packed with wonderful thoughts and ideas. So there's something you want to leave the listeners with for words of wisdom or something to think about going forward?
You know what's on my mind right now, and maybe it's because it's Dallas Startup Week and I'm around a lot of, tech creators, people who are starting things from scratch, and I've got the Future of Technology Summit coming up, so I'm thinking about tech-powered intentional communication and all the people who could make that happen. So just because it's on my mind right now, let me share this. We have the ability now to use technology and intention to communicate with people in a way that we never have before. There are people whose communication is trapped inside of them, and they need some kind of conduit to bring it out. And I'm suggesting that the innovators who are listening to this consider being intentional about your creation. Be intentional about what it communicates to the world, that you have created something. I think about Carly Fleischman. Do you know who she is?
No.
So
I don't.
Carly Fleischman, she was kind of big like a few years ago. She has autism. She's pretty far deep down on the autism spectrum. And she was nonverbal for a very, very long time, until one day she ran over to a laptop and typed out a sentence, and her parents read it. And there was this whole door that was unlocked.
Wow.
When her communication was released through this powered communication. And she had the ability to be intentional about how she made other people feel. And she's funny. And she's smart. And she interviews people. And she has a whole personality that was locked away. And I want people listening to this to think about how you are intentionally including the voices around you that are already there, and how you can be purposeful and intentional about going and finding more voices that are locked up and freeing them, because we need that kind of beauty, that kind of power from the good in this world. We need that kind of force to make a difference. So think about people in third world countries whose opinions might be valuable if you had thought to ask. And just look around the room and see if there's somebody sitting by themselves, and go intentionally connect with them, find their ideas, and see if you can do anything to empower them. I just want everybody to think about being intentional in your own communication, but also in the things that you create, the services and products that you bring to the world, and ask yourself what kind of a difference they make and how much bigger it could be if you intentionally included everybody else's voices too.
I love that. That is such a beautiful thing to end on, because it's the whole message of intention and not leaving anybody behind. That is amazing and beautiful. I think we all need to take that
Thank
part.
you.
Thank you.
It's
and Lila, thank you so much.
Thanks for talking with me about my awkward.
I love it. Thank you for being willing to open up and share it. And I look forward to many more conversations going forward. And good luck at the Future of Tech conference coming up next week.
Thank you. I can't wait. I'll tell you all about it.
All right. Thanks, Lila. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.